Hey guys, what's going on? It's Munk here. Just wanted to go and give you guys a little bit of a heads up on this week's video. One, I was trying out a new setup, so my sound quality isn't what it usually is, so I do apologize about that. And two, we are talking about the Amityville case, and apparently some people who have read the book ended up getting like viscerally sick. And it actually did happen to Moose, so you'll go and see her at a certain point of the video become pretty distraught, I think. And just to let you guys know, she is okay, but if you're one of the people who have read the book and it had this type of effect on you, please feel free to skip this video. Anyway, let's get it. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The FrEEK Show. I got Moose here with me, as per the usual.
Hey.
And today, our case is a bit different than it usually is. And that's because this case that we're doing this week is part true crime, part supernatural. We, today, are talking about the Amityville Horror case. Whoa.
Bing.
Spiffy. And you are familiar with at least some of this.
Oh, yeah.
Some of it or all of it?
A good chunk of it.
Okay.
I'd say at least like 75% of it.
Because with me, I learned a lot of stuff when I was actually researching it, especially with the true crime aspect, and then even with the Lutz's experience. Like, there was a lot to unpack in this one.
Oh, yeah.
So the way that we're going to do this one is, we're going to start off talking about the true crime, because that happened in the house first. And then afterwards, we're going to move on to the supernatural experience, which was recorded by the Lutzes, and it was even made into movies. And I say movies, because there is more than one. Yep, I agree. And then, after we're done talking about, like, the general idea of it, of the paranormal aspect of it, we're going to go ahead and actually discuss different theories about things and different witness accounts and things like that. So, hold on to your seats, because, yeah. Alright, are you ready, Moose?
No, but let's do this anyway.
Okay. So, on November 13th, 1974, tragedy struck the city of Amityville, New York. The DeFeo family was found murdered in their beds, with the sole survivor, Ronnie, also known as Butch, DeFeo Jr. Butch was a troubled person, and he had issues with bullying growing up, and there was also reports of violence at home. And it is said that Ronnie Sr. had a bad temper, and he would usually take things out on Butch, for the most part. These two things caused a shift in Butch's personality. He would constantly get into fights at school, as well as with his father at home. His parents tried making Butch go to counseling, but when he refused, the DeFeo parents decided to just bribe him with money in order to get him to behave. They were just throwing money at him. They even bought him a car and a boat that they kept in the boathouse out back. It was a very nice house, half the set. Like, huge house. Right on the water. Like, if you guys have seen the movie, that's pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate for how it looked. Butch started using drugs at the age of 17. And I'm not talking about pot either. He took heroin and LSD mostly. Butch was known around the city to have a bad temper and was slightly off. On November 13th, 1974, 21-year-old Butch began expressing concern for his family. You see, his father never showed up for work, which they worked together at the family dealership, like the car dealership. They got him a job there. Um, but Dad never showed up for work, and no one could get an answer whenever they tried calling the house. Later, Butch would try calling again from his girlfriend's house, but still no answer. Butch saw several friends throughout the day. Each one he expressed concern about the lack of communication from his family. And he ended up making plans to meet everybody at the bar later that evening. While he was there, he kept talking about being worried about his family. So finally, he decided to go home and check on them. A little while later, Butch came bursting into the bar declaring that someone had murdered his parents. A friend asked him, "Are you sure they aren't just sleeping?" That's a true story. Somebody said, "Are you sure that they're just not sleeping?" When Butch cried no, because he was very upset when he came into the bar, a bunch of them hopped in their cars and drove over to the DeFeo home, which I guess was only like a block or two away. And one of the friends called the police, and when they arrived, they discovered the rest of the family dead. Butch was saying that he thought it might have been a mob hit at first, and he was taken into police custody for his own protection. Upon investigating the mob story, though, too many details didn't add up. Butch would later confess to the murder of both of his parents, his 2 sisters, and his 2 brothers, and siblings' ages varied between 18 and 9 years old. Everyone in town had known what had happened before even the police did. The moment they heard the DeFeos had been killed and the only remaining family member left was Butch, they had all known that he had done it. Like, I've watched so many different documentaries on it, and everyone's just like, "Oh no, Butch did it. Like, we knew it. We knew it right away."
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put it in here, but I feel like I should mention that Butch had a collection of guns. Alright, so apparently, late that night, Butch was in the basement using drugs and watching an old war movie. And then he got up, took one of his many guns, and went to his parents' bedroom. He shot both of his parents twice. He then proceeded to his brother's room, shot both of them once, and then he went into his 13-year-old sister's room, shot her once, and then Butch made his way upstairs to his sister's Dawn's room. She was 18, and he shot her one time as well. Now, this is where things start to get weird, though. Apparently, no one had woken up during this ordeal. Police tested the gun, and apparently they said that it could be heard up to a mile away, but not a single person in the house woke up. None of the neighbors even heard any gunshots, but they remember hearing the family's dog barking. Butch would later go on record to say that he had heard the voices of his sleeping family plotting to kill him, so he decided to kill them first. Later, he would go on to say that a being in a dark hooded coat with black hands handed him the gun and told him to kill his family. Honestly, the story changed so many times. There were so many variations of the story, including one that the sister Dawn had actually been a part of the murders, that it's hard to distinguish what actually happened that night. Ronald DeFeo Jr. died in prison March 12th, 2021. So just a few weeks ago, as of filming this.
Huh.
Yeah, I found that out in
didn't know
researching. And that's the story of the DeFeo murders. Now, let's move on to the actual Amityville Horror story. The one that all the movies are based off of. Well, 2 of the movies are based off of. I don't know about the other ones, because I didn't bother watching any of them.
I'm pretty sure there's a couple based on the DeFeo stuff, too.
Well, the DeFeo stuff is mentioned in all of the movies. Yeah. But, like, as far as, like, the actual like Amityville Horror, like the book situation.
That's all Lutz
That is all
story.
George and Kathy Lutz. And they moved into the home on Ocean Avenue with her 3 kids in December of 1975, just over a year after the horrendous murders of the DeFeo family. Like, it was literally just over a year. George and Kathy state that they knew something was up with the house when they heard the lowball price of the large Dutch colonial home on a lake with a boathouse. And when they were done looking at the house, which was a bit out of their price range, the real estate agent told them about the tragedy that had just happened over a year ago. After discussing it as a family, they decided that they should buy the house. However, weird things started to happen immediately. George said that within the first couple hours, their dog had managed to somehow hang itself on the chain trying to go over a fence. Something that the dog had never done. Don't worry, people, the dog didn't die. They managed to help the dog, and yeah, the dog was fine. And later that day, it is said that a priest / family friend had actually came by to bless the house, given the crimes that were committed there. However, when the priest was in the room that belonged to the 2 youngest DeFeo boys, he said that he felt a dark presence in the room, heard something say, "Get out," and then felt an invisible force slap him across the face. The priest quickly left, saying not to spend too much time in that room. It is reported that he was also experiencing flu-like symptoms. He ended up getting blisters on his hands, and there was even some kind of car trouble after leaving. That was just the first day. After Christmas, however, things started to get really bad. The Lutz family reported personality changes in all of them. George would wake up at 3:15 every night, which is the estimated time of the murders. Kathy would dream about the murders as if she was the one that they were happening to. Green slime would randomly show up throughout the house. And then, of course, there's the infamous red room, which was a small little area in the basement. Like, it's been reported different ways, but I guess the way that it actually was just like the small little cubby area, like a Harry Potter nook. And it was painted red, and George and Kathy recall there being a really bad smell in there, as well as the family dog would not go near it. There was even reports of levitations of all the family members, their beds. George recalls hearing a marching band playing in the middle of the night one night and went downstairs and found nothing and no one there. However, all the furniture had been moved up against the walls and the rug had been pulled back. Like, it had been rolled back as if somebody was actually in there practicing. The youngest of the 3 children also apparently had an invisible friend named Jody, who could change appearance, but usually showed itself as a pig with glowing red eyes. George and the oldest child even saw glowing eyes coming from her bedroom window one night when they were walking back in from the boathouse. They ran up to the room. They didn't see anything wrong. They would also often see the daughter alone in her room, sitting on her bed, talking or reading to Jody, while the rocking chair in the room would rock back and forth all on its own. Things started getting so bad that they even tried blessing the house themselves and heard a voice saying to stop. After this, the activity got so bad that they just left the house after only living in it for 28 days, leaving practically all of their possessions behind. Ed and Lorraine Warren, which we've talked about a little bit on the channel before, they even investigated the house afterwards, and Lorraine is quoted to say that this was the closest to hell that she hoped she would ever get. And that's a direct quote. And that's pretty much all I have written down here. So now opens up the discussion time. And Moose, you read the book, right?
Yeah, I was like 13 or 14 when I read the book. I wanted to read it when I was a lot younger. I think I was like 9 or 10 when I saw the book in like our bookcase, and I asked my mom about it, and because like I never read her books unless I asked first. So I was like, hey, can I read this one? And she was like, no. Like, she was very strictly against me reading it for the longest time. And finally, like I said, when I was like 13 or 14, she broke and she was like, go ahead. But so when I was a kid, I had a bad habit of reading the last few pages of the book.
Okay.
She said, go ahead, but you're not allowed to read the last few pages. She actually taped the last few pages so I couldn't read them. So she wouldn't tell me anything about when she read it at all. So I started reading it, and like I would read a little bit and I'd start to feel kind of like lightheaded, a little sick, like really anxious, and I was like, okay, I'll put it down for a little bit because maybe it's just the content of it is like, getting
Messing
to
with
me.
your young
I'd put it
mind.
down and I'd feel worse. Like it would come like full hammer down, like I'd be very sick
Is this like a
until
normal
I
thing that
picked,
happened to people? Like while reading it?
well, I didn't know what was happening. Like I said, I would get super sick, and like it was messing with my head at that point. Like I started to understand why she wouldn't let me read it when I was younger. And eventually it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm almost to the end of the book. And it took me, you know how fast I read.
Yeah.
Let me preface this for everyone who doesn't know how fast I read. I read 3 Game of Thrones books within a week over the summer.
Three what?
Um, yeah,
No, three what?
3 Game of Thrones books
Oh shit.
within a week.
Damn.
Um, it took me almost 2 full weeks to finish this book.
Jesus.
And I was sick, like sick the whole time. Every time I'd put it down, I'd get worse. And I literally had to push myself through finishing reading the book. And there were several times that I would just have mental breakdowns in the middle of reading. Like I would start crying, I would start, like panicking, having freak outs. And that's why this, is such a touchy thing for me. And I got to the end, and mom untaped the last 3 pages, and it tells you in there that that's a very common thing that happens is when people read this book, they start to feel really sick. That when they were
Really?
writing the book and when they were gathering stories for it, stuff like that would happen. And mom looked at me and said, everything that just happened to you over these past 2 weeks happened to me when I read it. It wasn't as bad with her. Wouldn't tell me anything. And I think that me not knowing what happened to her kind of like solidified that, I guess. But I mean, we got rid of the book because
I don't
just
blame you.
having it in the house after that point, like anytime I see a copy of that book puts a pit in my stomach. Like the idea of someone else reading that book and experiencing that same kind of thing and getting,
No wonder it became such a
it,
phenomenon.
but it might not happen to like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know that the book
like,
got really, really
yeah,
super popular, which ended up being the cause for them making the movie of it.
yeah. But I mean, like the idea of someone else, and that's why I was like, I don't recommend you read the book because it did take me so long, and it did take such like a heavy toll on me when I read it. And like even to this day, like I'm shaking just thinking about it because it freaks me out because that experience was like it wasn't anything that was,
Fucking crazy.
you know, paranormal happening to me.
Hmm.
I wasn't living this experience, but I was having nightmares. I was having, panic attacks. I was not sleeping, not eating right. I was, getting really sick. And like, by sick, I mean like physically, violently ill. So, I mean, like, it, it's definitely something that sticks with you. And I, to this day, can't watch the original. And I have a hard
Really?
time watching the remake, but I cannot watch the original.
Really? That's, wow. Like, even watching the movie, like, brings that on for you? Jeez. Now,
Because
I
there's
did
just
hear
there's certain
that before
parts.
the book even came out, um, the author Jay Anson went and sent like a few manuscripts to people. I think there's a total of five, and like all five of them, like or most of them, had like really, really bad things happen to them, like heart attacks, or car accidents. Um, like I did hear about that, but I didn't even know that people who read the book. That's wow. Question: in the book, does it actually say what happened that like final night? Because
Honestly,
all the
I don't
interviews I could find, nowhere in any interview will they talk about it.
I don't remember. I don't think it does, but I don't 100% remember because I remember very vivid bits and pieces. I'm sure watching this in post you'll like kind of see it,
Mm-hmm.
but the second that you started talking about, the marching band and talking about Jody and stuff, like I vividly remember reading those parts and having to put the book down because I just like it messed with me so bad. And it brings on a visceral reaction. Like it makes me so like physically uncomfortable to think about because it was such like an intense thing. And like that was parts that I would like have nightmares about and I would get sick over. And like there's just specific stuff in the book that doesn't really get addressed in the movies, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get addressed in a lot of like interviews and stuff that they do. And it just there are certain things that hit points that it's, like I said, a visceral reaction, like a physical uncomfortableness, like a pressure on your chest to think about.
Yeah, and um, like I know that the family, like I said, the family refused to speak about what happened that final night. And every single interview I was able to find, um, even the oldest son, like they did a movie with him, like a documentary movie where they were talking to him about like his whole experience and everything, and like he even refused to talk about that final night, and like he opened up about a lot of stuff. Like according to him, I don't know. Keep in mind, I don't know if any of this is true, but apparently, according to the oldest son, Daniel, uh, according to him, George was into like the occult stuff and like witchcraft and hypnotism and telekinesis, and the both of them actually go and admit that at the time that they moved into the house, they were both practicing transcendental meditation, which they believe kind of opened up the door for the spirits to mess with them.
I don't know about any of that. Yeah, that I don't know. I think that definitely I don't think that it just
Okay.
the events that happened with the DeFeo family.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in houses where stuff like that has happened. And it's a very like you can feel something, like the energy's off.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what a lot of people said, like walking into the house.
yeah, and you can tell like something bad happened
Mm-hmm.
there. But generally speaking, something is not going to set something like that off to the extent that it supposedly did with the Lutzes without provocation, without something kind of giving
And
it that
that's kind of
extra
what
nudge.
Daniel was saying, was that because of everything that George was into, like he found books on like witchcraft and, like I said, hypnotism. He said that he saw George move a wrench without touching it. Um, which again, I don't know if any of that's true or not. But according to Daniel, it's George's fault that everything happened.
And oh God, I like sorry.
You okay?
Like I said, this is a super like
Do you need to take a minute? Should we be right back after these messages?
yeah.
Hey, you guys, just wanted to pop back in here just to say that if you guys haven't seen our last update video, there's some things coming to the channel, one of which is we are combining 60-second synopsis of Moose's Movie Mondays into Munk and Moose Movie Talk. It's just going to be a lot easier for us that way. Molly, what are you doing? Thank you. Cat. And then another thing is that the big special project that we've hinted at in other videos and on Twitter is that we are actually making a short horror film. It is pretty much already scripted. We just got to figure out how to do one thing, and then after that we're going to go ahead and start recording. Think it's pretty solid. Anyways, back to the Amityville case.
Like I said, you can go ahead and start now. But just the anxiety that I felt when I read the book, like it's hit, like my stomach is in knots right now, and like my chest is like, I feel like there's something sitting on my chest, and I just feel like very anxious, very unsettled, and I don't, something in my brain is like telling me the catch him and kill him part that's in the movie was actually in the book, if I do recall, where he just kept hearing catch him and kill him, catch him and kill him, catch him and kill him, and like that
Well, they
that
didn't
phrase
really
really
get
fucking
into
shocked me the
that.
longest time.
They didn't really get into that with the original, right? I don't
I
think
don't
they
think
really
so,
did it
but
in the original. I think that was just in the remake. But
something
there
tells
is.
me that that was in the book at least once, like a phrase, something like that was in the book.
So we do have to talk about like a lot of the theories on everything, just because like there's a lot of them. One of them is Ketchum, which was supposedly somebody that was tied to the Salem witch trials. Like he was like on trial for being a witch, and they like cast him out. There's While there is like proof of age on Ketchum, there's no proof at all that he was actually had anything to do with the Salem witch trials or being accused or anything like that or being thrown out. There's no record of him ever living in Amityville. Or like in that area. Um, uh, Parapsychologist Hans Holzer, which is like a very famous big name, he went in there with a like some kind of medium, like a specific kind of medium. I can't remember the name right now, and this lady said that there was like an Indian ground like there. And that there's been different stories that came up. One of which is the theory that the grounds were actually used as like where they would go and put crazy people to and just leave them there to die, like take care of themselves or die. There's also another theory that there was, and I think this is one that she said, was that there was an Indian chief that was buried there, and like with his horse, and at some point the skeletal remains were dug up, and like I guess somebody was like playing like soccer with the skull of the Indian chief or whatever, and that upset his spirit. According to all the Native Americans within that area, there was never a tribe anywhere near there. So these are two things that are kind of up in the air. I did say that we were going to be talking about both the paranormal and the skeptical side. There's also the skeptical side of how many times Ronnie DeFeo Jr. changed this story. Because he changed it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess
I do recall reading like several different accounts that were like, there were like 4 or 5 different stories that I just read into that I was like,
what actually happened? And nobody actually knows. The last story that came from Butch was that him and his sister Dawn planned everything out. And that, like, I guess, like, something happened and things escalated and they decided to just go and do it. And it wasn't until after the fact that they realized it. Like, I guess Dawn apparently shot the dad twice, and then the mom stirred and started reaching for a gun, so Ronnie shot her. Like, Butch shot her twice, and then he left the house, and then came back, and Dawn killed everybody else. Like, by the time he got back, and they fought over the gun. That's one of the last stories that came from him. All the stuff about, like, seeing the spirit and whatnot, or, like, hearing all the voices, those are generally chalked up to either two things. One of which is that he was on heroin, and then the other one...
LSD will do that to a bitch.
The other one is that the hooded figure with the black hands wasn't actually a demon, but it was Dawn. And supposedly, this is kind of a hearsay type thing. It was reported anonymously to a reporter, but he said that a DEA agent was actually watching the house, and they saw Dawn leave, and she was wearing a black coat with the hood up and wearing black gloves. And said that he saw her go like a little further down and like throw something into the water. And later on, it was reported that they actually found a gun there, and I think like a pillowcase. So that's what Ronnie did, was he went and he put the gun and his bloody clothes into a pillowcase and threw them into the lake or the river or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, I'm like, my head is spinning.
A lot of information, right? And plus, like you said, like it's bringing back flashes of things. Another thing that actually came from Butch, though, was before he died, at some point, like in the last couple of years, he went and actually said, the only evil thing that existed in the house were the crimes that I committed. It was the murders. That's it. There's no evil spirits there. A friend, like a family friend of the two younger DeFeo boys, said that he actually helped them paint the Red Room. And it was like to be like their like toy area. Like that's where they were supposed to keep their toys. He said that he was over there one day and they brought him down there, and like the dad handed them a can of red paint because that's what he had and said, go at it. Again, I don't know if that's true. These are just reports that I heard and interviews that I saw. There's no even real saying of whether or not like these people were actually legit who they said that they were.
I will say though, like, in the case of like if there was nothing evil originally in there, evil acts like can open up, like acts like that can open up. Like, this is gonna sound really stupid, but like when they were talking about Horcruxes in Harry Potter, like it takes an act of true evil to open up an opportunity for something unnatural.
I agree. And
So I mean, like that's very possible.
yeah, and that's kind of what Lorraine Warren said when she went there on a quote unquote psychic sleepover. What actually happened was a news team from like the local news station or whatever, like they actually took in Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they brought in like people with them, and the news station even brought in other people. Like there was like a total of like 18 people there or something like that, and like one of the reporters is actually the one that calls it the psychic sleepover. Um, but she was saying that while they didn't necessarily catch anything on camera, uh, everybody that was there, apparently, except for the two reporters, like the actual reporters, things happened to. Right? Like, one of the tech guys who was super fit, like, he was in, like, some kind of, like, run-of-the-mill, like, I'm gonna sit here in the studio and just do my thing, and, like, this guy actually worked, like, on war coverage. And they said that they started going up the stairs, and all of a sudden he had to stop because his chest was hurting. Apparently multiple people in the house suffered heart palpitations. And then, of course, like all the different psychics were all feeling different things and stuff like that. Talked a little bit about the paranormal type stuff, and definitely some of the stuff with the DeFeo stuff. We do really have to talk about the skeptical side of things. And then we'll jump back into the paranormal stuff. But, so, on the skeptical side, a lot of people think that Ed and Lorraine Warren were full of shit. And apparently that every single house they went into was the most haunted place ever. And there's demons all over the place. Like, according to them, and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's a lot of people who doubt Ed and Lorraine Warren. There's people that went and... So this is actually a fact. The Lutzes actually met with William Weber, who was Ronnie DeFeo Jr.'s lawyer. Like, they, like, met him and stuff like that, and on both sides of it, because this was actually a taped conversation, over the course of, like, several hours, they went through, like, 3 or 4 bottles of wine, and were talking about the case, and how they can go and spice it up a little bit for the media. Like, this is an actual thing that exists. Well, existed. Nobody knows what happens to what happened to the tape, but both the lawyer and the Lutzes said, no, this actually happened. And then when they found out that Weber wanted to cut DeFeo, like a certain amount of the profits, they went and decided not to work with him and they're on their own. Which they said that was the cause for William Weber to be like, no, this is all bullshit. The Jody, it has also been reported by the neighbors to be one of the neighborhood cats, which was a fat cat that was known to like sit on people's windowsills and like watch them, supposedly. And apparently, now this is something that I actually found kind of weird. Ronnie DeFeo would call the cat Pig because it was huge. And that's kind of the way that Jody, or like Jody was described as, was a pig. And I just found it really interesting that it was...
There's no way that little girl could have known.
No, there's no way. There's no possible way that the little girl could have known it. So even if it was the cat, how the hell would she go and do that? And then, so it is also really worth noting that the Lutzes actually took lie detector tests. Like, they were hooked up to polygraphs. and the people that were doing the test with them said that they were absolutely telling the truth. So they're just like, either this stuff really happened, or they actually believe that this stuff happened. Daniel Lutz will not take a lie detector test. He gets very, very angry when asked about a lie detector test. Like, in that documentary, which is called My Amityville Horror, it's actually a very interesting thing to watch. But, like, at the end, they asked him if he would ever be open to it, and he said, I told you not to fucking ask that question. We're gonna have words after this. Like, honestly, like, the stuff that he kind of described was just kind of insane. Like, apparently him and George did not get along. Because Daniel was thinking, oh, this guy's trying to replace my dad. And so, like, Daniel goes and admits that, like, every chance he got, he was trying to make things hard for George.
Yeah.
And he actually ended up leaving home at, like, 13 or 14.
Christ.
Yeah. Like, his mom finally, like, let him go and stopped calling the police and just let him go. And then
I just want to say, I could barely make chicken nuggets at 13.
But, like, the hatred that he had for George was, like, extreme. Like, when they went and mentioned, like, him dying, Daniel started laughing. Like, that's the kind of relationship that they had. It is also worth noting that Kathy and George didn't stay together. They ended up getting a divorce. Both of them have passed on now, but up until their dying days, they went and said the same exact story over and over again. Like, their story never changed. They always had each other's backs with it. It's like, whether or not these things actually happened, they definitely believe that they did. And same thing with Daniel Lutz. Like, just hearing him talk about the experience, and he said that he remembers being in his room, like him and his brother were sharing a room, and their beds were literally going like this, like on and off the floor. The ceiling apparently had like dents in it from the bedposts of the beds. Like, that's how violently they shook. And I totally believe that, if anything, like, he does believe that it happened. I can't say whether or not it actually happened. I wasn't there. Like, I don't know what they went through. But there's not a doubt in my mind that they actually fully believe in what they say happened to them. And given your, like, reactions to everything while talking about it, I'm gonna say you do as well. And I don't blame you. Like, I know you're like, a sane person. Yeah. Some people who watch that documentary was just like, Daniel's fucking unhinged. But at the same time, it's like, if he actually went through that at 9 years old, like, if you went through that at 9 years old, I'm sure you would be unhinged too.
So, like, yeah, you know me. You've known me for a while now, and you know that, like, I don't mess around when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm very cut and dry with it. And just this whole, like, you know that I don't react like this to just anything. I mean, okay, so I was at Amanda's house, her new house, and we were getting some stuff. Well, it had been her grandparents' house, and they both passed on. And the second I walked into the house, I was like, and like, this is why Mom takes me house hunting when we find new houses, because I, like, get very strong feelings, very, you know, if the house is uncomfortable, I'm gonna be like, no. So we walked into the house, and I just didn't say anything to her, because I didn't want to, like, freak her out or anything. And I was like, And I guess she kind of noticed how quiet I was and kind of how I was like very hyper aware, I guess. And I was like, she was like, "You good?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "The vibes are just a little." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Nothing." I was like, "Don't worry about it." And she was like, "No. Were you gonna say that it's haunted?" And I was like, "It kind of feels like that." And she goes, "Yeah, Grandpa died in that room." And I was like, "Why didn't you tell me that before we came here, first of
For
all?"
real.
But yeah, I mean, like, I had no clue. Like, I knew that, her grandparents had already passed, but I didn't know she had died in that house.
Yeah. That's something that really should mention before we bring, because I'm sure that she knew that you're sensitive to that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
definitely would have
So,
mentioned that beforehand.
but yeah, I mean, like, I was just chill about it. Like, I was very, you know, it's mildly uncomfortable in here for me because I felt like I was being watched. Like, I kind of felt like somebody was just kind of, but it wasn't like a malicious type of thing. It just felt like somebody was watching us as we were going about our business. This is like the opposite side of that coin. Like, I'm so genuinely paranoid right now. And like, my head is spinning. My vision has been like doing weird things since we started this video. And I'm sure that you can tell from like my reactions and stuff. I'm just like, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you know that I might get a little wigged out or something if we're talking about something like this, like the Ghost Watch video. Yeah, I was like the whole time, but that was like just, kind of like I was a little edged. I had just finished watching the movie.
Yeah.
This is something from almost 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's still like I said, it's
Yeah.
bringing back waves of just like the same thing. Like, my chest hurts, my stomach is in knots, my head is so many kinds of messed up right now, and it takes a lot to get this kind of.
Yeah.
This is the same reactions that I have thinking about the stuff that happened in New Orleans the first time that I went back a couple years ago. I mean, and that happened to me. So I mean, like, just the difference between, you know, how I would normally react to something like this. It's been a very uncomfortable video.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sure that everyone can tell on my face. I'm sure you'll be able to see on my face even
Yeah.
more so in post editing and stuff. I mean, it's just there's just so much like, and I'm sure you're gonna see me like zone out a couple of times. I swear I was listening, but just like it was like a barrage of like thoughts in my head, and like just I don't like I'm very disoriented right now, I guess. Like, my head feels like it's too full, and it feels like it's like, I don't know. This is gonna sound really weird, but it doesn't feel like it's all mine. Like, it feels like there's too many other things going on from like other people in my head, and I just don't feel. Yeah, I know that's a really weird way to explain it, but I know you're gonna understand what I mean.
Yeah, I completely understand. So,
I look like friggin' from The Shining right now, but it's fine. My nose is all red, and I've been crying, and it's fine.
how about if we call this video here?
That's probably a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and end this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Tune in next week when Moose is going to try to do a true crime topic for us.
It's gonna be the WVU co-ed murders. Kind of like a close to home situation where I'm only a couple hours from WVU. One of my friends actually did this case on one of her podcasts, and she recommended it to me. I'd heard about it, but I hadn't done any kind of extensive research or anything, so I'm definitely going to be bringing some new information to the table on this one for even myself. I'm very excited to kind of learn about this
Very
one.
excited to hear about it.
Also, I'm very sorry, you guys, for the just the kind of general reactions that I've had during this video. Like I said, Monk has known me for a long time now, and this, this is not.
This is not normal for
I
you.
never get this.
No.
Yeah, I never get this emotional or this, strung out over something, and I do apologize
I think you did
because
over
I know.
the Jessica Renee Johnson case.
Yeah,
But
but that
was
was
a
more
very
just like
emotional.
an emotional.
Yeah.
This is just like, this is something else entirely. Start crying. Okay, we gotta end the video.
Okay. Alright. Thank you guys very much for watching. Stay spooky.